Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dungeon Dive. Daniel here. I hope you're doing well, and if you're not, I hope you are soon. Okay, today on the Dungeon Dive, we are returning to the Runebound Retrospective. And in this episode, we are taking a look at Runebound 3rd Edition. And I think this is going to be covered all in one kind of long, comprehensive video. There aren't as many expansions for 3rd edition as there were for 2nd edition, so I think we can get it all in one super long kind of epic video. Let's take a look at the box of Runebound 3rd edition, and we'll read a little bit about the game here. Become a hero of Terranoth and defend the realm. Welcome to Terranoth. It is a land filled with great cities, powerful magic, and dangerous enemies. From the dizzying heights of Madman Pass to the hidden glades of Starfall Forest, adventure lurks around every bend of the road. In Runebound, you take on the role of a questing hero, ready to forge your own destiny. In each game, you'll search ancient ruins, fight vicious battles, and learn powerful new skills. Dangerous forces threaten Terranoth, and only the greatest hero can defeat them and restore peace. Will you become a living legend? So there we have the back of the box here of Runebound 3rd Edition. So Runebound 3rd Edition was released originally in 2015, and it was developed through 2016. So 3rd Edition of Runebound was designed by Lukas Litzinger. Lukas Litzinger was not a very prolific designer. According to BGG, he worked on Android Netrunner, Warhammer Disc Wars, and Star Wars Destinies. So he didn't have a ton of design credits. The cover art was again done by Jesper Rising and Edge Studios. The board art was done by Jake Murray with Simon Dominic. And we have interior art by Jacob Atenzia, Alex Apron, John Bosco, Anna Christensen, Willame Dukos, Simon Eckhart, Nicholas Gregory, David Griffith, Jordan Kerbow, Matt Larson, Charlene Lescanf, Florian Stitz, Preston Stone, Sandara Tang, Damon Westenhofer, and Joe Wilson, with art direction by John Talon. So Runebound 3rd Edition came out in a very prolific time for Fantasy Flight games. This was probably the height of their golden era, their golden age. We had games like Warhammer Quest, the adventure card game, the Game of Thrones living card game, Descent 2nd Edition, Imperial Assault, Netrunner, Lord of the Rings living card game, Forbidden Stars, Relic, Battlelore 2E, their version of Talisman, Eldritch Horror, and Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition were all being produced right when Runebound 3rd Edition came out, or maybe a little bit before and during. You couldn't go to a game store without seeing a ton of Fantasy Flight game stuff on the shelves. This is when they were just a massive juggernaut. And I think because of that, Runebound 3rd Edition got completely lost in the crowd and in the dust. And so Fantasy Flight pretty quickly abandoned it. There are clues even in the expansions that we didn't even get a complete cycle of releases. And I would bet dollars to donuts that they are sitting on one unreleased expansion that we will probably never see. When Runebound 3rd Edition first came out, I remember it not being very well received. Runebound 2nd Edition fans did not appreciate all of the changes. I bought it at retail as it was coming out, and I really liked it. It was a very different game, but I still enjoyed it. Over the years, I think the opinion of it seems to have shifted, and I'm surprised now by how much people seem to love it. In actuality, what probably happened is that the people who didn't like it just stopped complaining about it and moved on, and that's great. We have no love for edition wars at the Dungeon Dive. At its core, Runebound 3rd Edition is still a hex-crawling overland adventure game On the surface level, it does have a lot in common with Runebound 2nd Edition. However, there are a lot of details that are different. It really does feel like a different game in terms of mechanisms. It is much more of a modern game, and it is probably overall a better designed game than 2nd Edition. The seeds in Runebound 3rd Edition were planted here for Lord of the Rings Journey in Middle Earth. And I think in some of the card play and the way the skills work in that game, I can see the beginnings of that in this game. Because it is a more modern design, I don't really house rule Runebound 3rd Edition like I do Runebound 2nd Edition. Runebound 2nd Edition is a very basic game, and it's more of a foundation upon which I can build and play in or with like a sandbox. It's easy to change things in 2nd Edition and not mess things up. Runebound 3rd Edition is a more tightly and focused designed, and in my opinion, it is better when just played rules as written. In this episode, we will discuss the things that make Runebound 3rd Edition different. We will take a look at some of the stuff in the base game and all of the official expansions. And during this discussion, we will show some gameplay examples and discuss my general thoughts on the game. So the first key difference, I think, is the art. So we still have the cover design. The cover art is still done by Jesper Ising. But the interior art, the art on the cards, the overall graphic design, and the art on the board is quite a bit different. The board art is absolutely beautiful. I'm going to push in a little bit and just kind of do a flyover of the board just so you can kind of see all of the amazing details on this board. This is one of my favorite game boards of all time. I love the size of the hexes. I love all of the detail. The art, the painting is just absolutely beautiful. This is one of my favorite, absolutely favorite hex maps in any game of all time. It's a real shame that the game was abandoned and we never got any of the 2nd Edition big box expansions with their new maps drawn in this new style. I would I would just love to see all of those great maps from 2nd Edition in this new detailed modern style because this art is just absolutely beautiful. The art in the game is a little more colorful. It is a little more vibrant and perhaps a bit more cartoony, so that probably does throw some people off. The cards feel a lot more modern. They don't have just a stark kind of dark black border. There's a little more to the cards. They just look a little more modern. I think Runebound 2nd Edition is just old enough to where it does feel a little vintage in its design. And I know that's one of the things that does kind of appeal to gamers these days, is having that vintage vibe. But Runebound 3rd Edition definitely feels more modern, and you can tell that they were working very hard to bring this more in line with Descent 2nd Edition, to make them a companion games in terms of their lore and theming and art. I have a feeling that they were working on the art for both of these new editions, for Descent and for Runebound, at the same time, and they were sharing art assets between the two games. Another difference is in the characters and how the characters are represented on their character cards and how they utilize skills. There is also a difference in how combat works and how assets work, and all three of these things are kind of intermingled, so we will work through them one at a time. So the characters that we get in the base game are Corvin, Master Thorn, Lord Hawthorne, Elder Mock, Laurel of Bloodwood, and Lisa. And on the front of these cards, you will have all of their stats. You will have their movement stat. That is how many dice they roll when you want to move. And movement is handled pretty much the same as it is in Runebound 2nd edition. You will be rolling terrain dice and then matching up the terrain with the symbols on the dice. Now, one difference here is in Runebound 2nd edition, we had icons for the terrain. Here we have pictures. I actually prefer the icons. I think it's a little easier. We also don't have any pictures for roads. You can use any of the dice to move along a road. And then this sign here, this icon here is a wild sign, and that can be anything. One key difference in moving is if you want to move across a river, you have to roll water. You can't just roll the terrain on the other side of the river. To cross a river, you have to roll water and spend that die to move across the body of water there. So you also have their health and their hand limit for skill cards. As you can see, something that is missing is fatigue. They did away with the fatigue stat in Runebound 3rd edition. And part of that is kind of handled with the hand of skill cards, because you will have a hand of cards, and when you are taking a challenge, you can exert yourself by discarding one of those cards, kind of like spending a point of fatigue. You will also have these 3 stats here, and those will govern how many skills you can have equipped. As you level up, you will gain skills in this game. The 3 skills, the 3 stats are body, mind, and spirit. So basically you have your strength, you have your intelligence, and your magical stats. Then each one of the characters will also have a special ability, such as bounty hunting for Corbin, or a different way that they can spend the tokens for their assets when they are doing certain things. Master Thorn can do a teleport, Lord Hawthorne has reach, Elder Mock has restore spirit, Laurel of Bloodwood has pathfinding, and Lisa has 9 lives. If you are defeated, you may exert to heal all damage. That's really, really powerful there. On the back of the character card, you will have their starting hand of skills. You will have their starting gold. You will have an icon depicting where they start on the map. On the map, there are major cities, and then there are also smaller minor areas. And some of those minor areas are towns, shrines, and strongholds. And so Corbin here, he starts in a stronghold. And then you will also have the starting chips, the starting pogs that each of the characters starts with. And we'll take a look at those as well. Let's read a little bit about Corbin to get an idea of the flavor text in this game. Corbin was once a respected member of the Dwarven Mining Guild in Burrowtown, or as the dwarves call it, Khazad-dûn. Never one to take an insult without repaying it tenfold, Corbin smashed in the face of a wanted criminal when the man failed to yield to Corbin's cart. After collecting the reward from the local authorities, Corbin decided to switch careers. Now he is an adventurer and bounty hunter, where his hot temper, burning loyalty, and thick skull are powerful assets. Okay, let's take a look at each of the starting pogs, the starting battle chips, and the mini for each one of these. So here we have Corbin. I think this was a time when FFG was making really nice minis. They are definitely smaller than a lot of minis that we see, especially nowadays. These are probably smaller 28 millimeter, but they had really upped their miniature sculpting and printing game from 2nd edition to 3rd edition here. So people who like minis, I think will get a lot of use out of the minis from Runebound. And then each of the characters starts with 3 battle tokens, 3 pogs, 3 chips. And these are used in place of dice when you are fighting. You will roll these, you will throw these like runes or like little talisman or dice, and you are coins, and you will flip those, and then you can spin those to do certain things. We'll take a look at those things that you can do with those in a minute. But basically you have some damage, you have some, what is that? I always forget what that is. A surge, a power surge in order to trigger your certain special abilities. And then there are also some yellow shaded icons. Those are used to determine initiative. Whoever throws the most gold or yellow shaded icons has initiative in the battle. There are agility icons, and then each one of the tokens also has a little symbol that shows what is on the reverse side, because part of this game is a little bit of a puzzle. The combat is a little bit of a puzzle, and sometimes you can flip the coins to do certain things, and you always want to just try to get the best combination of your coin throws, of your pog throws there. Okay, the next character here is Master Thorn, a longtime favorite of fans of Descent, especially Descent 2nd Edition and Runebound 3rd Edition. Here is his mini. Unfortunately, his staff is kind of bent. I need to dip this guy into some hot water to straighten out his staff here. And then here are his 3 starting cogs. So our cogs, 3 starting chips here. Lots of magic ability. So this is kind of a magic ability, that symbol there. So he will do lots of magic. This is a doubling icon. This allows you to, if you threw that and that, you could combine those two together to double the effects of whatever you threw. Very, very handy there. Next up, we have Lord Hawthorne, another favorite. This is a really, really nice little mini. I like him a lot. And then his battle tokens here, we have lots of damage. Lord Hawthorne is just dealing a lot of damage and blocking. And sometimes you might throw an absolute miss. So that's just a complete whiff. Next up, we have Elder Mock. Elder Mock is super cool. I love this dude. Whenever I play the game, I almost always play with Elder Mock. I just like him in terms of lore and in terms of his look here. Once a powerful leader of a Western Orc tribe, Mock was cast out of his ancestral home for reasons known only to a few. Soon after, he began his long wandering, a spiritual journey which has taken him far and wide to lands rarely seen and even more rarely explored. Recently, he has traveled throughout the realm of Terranoth, searching for something of deep personal value. What that thing is, Mock will not say. In the late evening, you may come upon him gently tapping his tribal drum, chanting some sad orcish lay in a deep voice to the rising moon. Do not let his melancholy of aged frame deceive you. Mock can be ferocious when the need arises. That's just a really nice backstory for him. And I like imagining him in this world, adventuring, searching for that going on that spiritual journey. But here are his tokens here. Again, kind of a magic-based character, and he has some doubling, but he also has some physical damage. So he's kind of like a battle mage in a way. He's strong, but he also knows some magic. And then we have Laurel of Bloodwood. Where is Laurel here? Let's see. Laurel of Bloodwood, kind of an elven archer. And Laurel of Bloodwood will have these 3 starting pogs. So just kind of more of an agile character, more of a character that uses their surge to do special things. And then finally we have Lisa here. Lisa's mini is okay. I'm not super stoked on Lisa's mini, but Lisa's pogs here, we have a good magic, we have a agility, a double damage there, 2 damage, and then another agility, a surge, and a defense. So at the beginning of the game, you will draw a hand of skill cards, and this is your total hand. This is how many skill cards you can have in your hand during the game. One of the things you can do on a turn is you can train to draw new skill cards into your hand, but then you have to discard down to your hand total. And skill cards, there are a number of different ways to use skill cards in Runebound 3rd Edition. In the base game, there are 6 different subsets of skills. And let's see, let's take a look at those 6 different skills here. So there are 10 skills in each subset. We have the Strength of the Wilds, the Thirst for Travel, Favor of the Gods, Military Training, Friends in Low Places, and Rune Magic. And like I said, each one of those has 10 cards associated with it. So here we have a skill, we have Interrogation. Whenever you defeat an enemy, you may gain a bonus trophy. A trophy is an adventure card that you beat the challenge on. You get to take that as a trophy. And then you can spend trophies to learn these skills and place these skills on your character card. You can have as many skills that match the icon. So Lisa here can have 2 body skills. She can have 2 mind and 2 spirit skills equipped. So there are some really cool builds in this game. You can focus on a build. At the end of the game, your characters really do feel different than when they started. So this interrogation skill, you need 3 gray trophies, and gray can be any trophies. So in the game, there are orange, there are green, and there are purple adventure cards that act as trophies, and we'll go over those in just a minute here. But for this set of skills, we have interrogation, stalwart, stamina, bulked up, discipline, living well, dual wield, intimidating, aggressive, defensive stance. And then we have another red set of skills. So there are 2 sets of skills associated with each stat. Here we have tireless, taxidermy, brutality, marksmanship, hardy, raised in the wild, feral strength, scavenging, adrenaline, mountaineering. And now we're on to our yellow skills here. So our mind skills. We have cheap trick, great band, streetwise, lady luck, cunning, unpredictable, puppet master, manipulative, ambitious, racketeering, black market. Our second set of yellow skills, adventurous, sense of direction, cartography, sharp-eyed, lay of the land, one step ahead, honed instincts, jack of all trades, sense weakness, cultural immersion. And then we move on to our spirit skills, 2 sets. We have conversion, offertory, circle of protection, revelation, walk on water, healing touch, ascendance, gilding light, meditation, inner fire, and battle sorcery, well of power, magic, possess, tap life, channel, farsight, magic shield, iron will, and counter charm. So as you can see, there are a lot of different skills in the game. Every single one of these is different. So that's 60 different skills that you can learn throughout the game and apply those to your character to create some very interesting combinations and characters. And each of the expansions also adds more skills. And at the beginning of the game, when you are setting up, you will choose 6 categories, 2 from each matching stat, to be made into your big 60 card skill deck. So there's a lot of variety in the skills. What you won't see from like Runebound 2nd Edition is Runebound 2nd Edition had skills like swim or climb or throw printed on their character, and those would allow you to add bonuses to challenges that had those skills. So the starting characters in Runebound 3rd Edition don't have any innate skills. You have to learn those as the game goes. You will keep skill cards in your hand, and as an action you can take to train, and that's when you can trade your trophies in to learn new skills. You can also spend skills from your hand to exert yourself, to add bonuses to overcoming challenges, and certain skills and certain things will require you to exert skills. And so the skills in hand, those become a currency that you can spend to overcome challenges. Okay, now let's take a look at the adventure cards, at the challenge cards. So as you can see, no longer do we have the challenges broken up into difficulties, starting with what we had: green, yellow, blue/purple, and red. You had 4 different difficulties of challenges in Runebound 2nd Edition. This game splits all of the adventure cards, all of the challenge cards, into 3 different categories. So we have combat, exploration, and social. Not all of the cards in the combat deck are combat, but most of them are. That just gives you kind of a clue of what you are more apt to draw from each one of these decks. I really love the exploration deck. Is a lot of fun. But let's take a look at the exploration deck first. So when you set up the game, you will draw 20 of the generic adventure cards. Then depending on which scenario you are playing, we'll cover the scenarios in a bit, you will mix in some scenario-specific cards. So as you start adding more of the generic cards to your deck, using the various expansions, you will have a lot of cards and you will only see maybe 20 of them in a game. So you will have a different subset of cards used for each game, depending on how you shuffle them. So one of the main things that you will be doing in the exploration cards is going on quests. And I think they took this idea from one of the expansions from second edition. And I feel like they also maybe incorporated some of the fan-made questing expansions in this game. Maybe they were influenced by it. But as you are adventuring, you will still have these adventure tokens that are set out on the map. And you can move on to one of those adventure tokens. And then for 2 actions, you can flip that over and you can draw a matching color. So in this instance, we would draw an exploration card. And maybe we would draw this, the Prince of Thieves. There are rumors of a new outlaw prince who hides deep within the hanging woods. He is generous to the poor and dangerous to the rich. So for an action, we can explore the outlaw glade. Now, this is a quest card. Quest cards are taken and they're laid by your character card. You can have any number of quest cards attached to your character card. And now we have a quest. We need to get up here. So we would need to get up here north into the outlaw glades. On a subsequent turn, we can move up to the outlaw glades. And then once we get there for an action, we can take an action to explore the outlaw glades. And then what we do is we take the number of terrain dice, the number of movement dice associated with our movement skill. So in this case, we have Lisa here with 3, and we would roll those 3 d6, and then we would look at the totals that we rolled compared to what we have here. And then we would get that thing for completing that quest. We might dig up some mushrooms. We might discover the outlaw's hideout, or we might secure an audience with the prince. These cards are super fun. I love the way that they utilize the different spaces on the map. They add a sense of questing, a sense of side questing that I really like with those fan expansions from Runebound 2nd edition. So all of that is incorporated into the base game. It makes the world feel more like a lived-in place because of the way it utilizes the different names of things. You know, this outlaw glade isn't just a name on a map, it's a thing associated with a quest card, and I think that is super cool. Sometimes in the adventure deck, you will also, or in the exploration deck, you will also have an event. And this is a random event that usually has 1, 2, or 3 choices. So here you approach a small hamlet and the entire population turns out to greet you. They lay their gifts in your path, begging for your blessing. You can gather a few items of value in exchange for your blessing, gain 2 gold and discard this card, or you can test your spirit strength, your spirit stat, to convince them that their gifts should be shared with the poor. Take this card as a trophy and draw an additional card. You would draw a social card. So let's talk a little bit about how you test your abilities in this game, because you will not be rolling 2d10. You will be drawing cards from your shuffled skill deck. And you draw as many cards as you have points in that skill. So we are testing our spirit. So our spirit is 2. So Lisa would draw 2 cards from the skill deck, and then she would look to see if she had any successes. In this case, there would be 2 successes. Usually you only need 1 success. If Lisa had skill cards in her hand, she could spend one of those to exert and draw an additional skill card to look for an additional success if she missed. So that's a pretty cool system. You're not rolling 2d10. You're not adding things. You are just drawing cards. Again, I think the seeds here were planted for Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth, because it is very similar in how you are using these cards as multiple things. And I do like that. I do love rolling dice too, but I think that the system here has some benefits and is fun as well. So this deck here is mainly quests and events, but there are a few enemies that you might have to fight while you are exploring. A really fun deck, a really deck full of adventure. I do really enjoy that. Okay, so now we'll take a look at the combat deck, the combat challenges, the combat adventures. As the name suggests, most of these have to do with combat. However, you still have some events and you still have some quests. So again, it's never a guarantee that you're going to get what the back of the deck says, but there is a better chance. So lots of combat in here against evil sorcerers. We have a deep elf, a troll, an orc brigand, a giant. We have an ogre, a beastman, kobolds, more ogres, more deep elves, more beastmen, and a hired thug. So if you were to move on to an orange token there, you could spend 2 actions. You could draw a combat card, and you might come across an event maybe. There are rumors of a powerful monster in these lands. Discard cards from the combat deck until you reveal an enemy. Fight that enemy, but that enemy has +3 health for the duration of the combat. You cannot retreat. Take this card as a trophy. Or you can explore to try to capture the beast. If you roll at least 2 of the terrain symbol that matches your hex, take this card as a trophy. Otherwise, discard this card. That's cool. That's a really nice choice that adds some thematic elements to this combat deck. But most of the cards in the combat deck will be combat challenges. And combat is done by throwing your pogs. It's not actually pogs. You're not having a slammer or anything. But these are thrown to do damage and to do certain things. And the enemies also have a number of different tokens that they will throw. And in the normal game, the competitive game, your opponent will throw for the enemy, you will throw for yourself, and then whoever throws the most golden tokens gets to go first, and then you will take turns exchanging pogs, exchanging tokens, doing damage, blocking damage, triggering, using surges to trigger your special abilities, the special abilities on the enemy, or perhaps the special abilities on your character. Or if you have different assets, and we'll take a look at the assets in a minute, but the assets, the things you can buy, the kind of loot you can buy and find, those will add different things that you can spend surges on, and those will also add new chits that you can add to your pool of battle tokens. I think it's a pretty cool little system. It does take some time. It does slow down combat a little bit, but it's more involved than just throwing dice. And so there are pluses and minuses to each. Sometimes I just want to throw dice and just have a really quick, easy combat with simple mechanisms. Sometimes I might want something a little more complex, a little more involved, with a little more thought put into it. And that is kind of one of the decision points that I ask myself when I want to play either Runebound 2nd Edition or Runebound 3rd Edition. Do I want just a very simple, kind of basic, light adventure game that I can play like a sandbox? If the answer is yes, I'll play 2nd Edition. If I want to experience a more modern design in a game and I want a little bit more depth in some of the mechanisms, then I'll play Runebound 3rd Edition. And finally, let's take a look at the social deck here. So there are a whole bunch of different social cards here, and most of these are events. So most of these are combat, most of these are quests, and most of the socials are events, such as a runesmith. A friendly dwarf shares knowledge of a secret runesmith who tends the fires in the heart of Yurthright's forge. We can test our our mind. We can test our mind at -1. So she could only draw 1 card to test this test to see if maybe we might get some gold. Or we can test mind to have the dwarf share more than just useless rumors, take goods from any market and discard this card. We'll talk about goods in a minute. Goods are kind of like they are a pickup and delivery side quest that you can pick up in the markets as you go shopping. But some of these cards might also be quests, and I don't think there is. It looks like a few small enemies in these social decks. So you have a really good chance of not having combat in this social deck, and there are also a few quests. But again, there's a lot of variety in the adventuring in Runebound 3rd Edition. I think they did a really good job of just bringing that adventure, the adventurous kind of game style to life in this game. I really do like that. Okay, now let's talk about the loot, the assets. Now, I don't have my loot and assets. I don't have them separated out from the base game and the expansions, but we can talk a little bit about them in general. So there are 5 different categories, actually 6 different categories of loot: A, B, C, D, E, and F. And at the beginning of the game, you will choose 3 of those to create your asset deck. Just similar to how you would choose 6 of the various skill groups to create your skill deck. And each one of those letters has a deck of cards associated with it. So here we have our E cards and our F cards and all the way through D and A and B and C's. So each one of these subsets will have a number of different things that you can buy when you go to one of the major cities. Just like in Runebound 2nd Edition, you will have a market phase in a city, and you can buy any of the assets that you can afford. Let's take a look at the E cards here. Each one of these has a good variety of things. Now, one of the things we mentioned just earlier was these trade goods. These are things that you can pick up in one city and take to another city to exchange for gold. So this is kind of that's a little sub quest. It's a little side quest, a little pickup and delivery quest. I think that is super cool. It's a good way to get gold in this game. Then there are things like the Fist of Iron, the Stone Armor, repeating crossbows, immolation. We have more goods, there are provisions. We have movement. These can help you move. A map stone, or maybe more goods there. More movement. A tribal cloak will add movement. A weapon will add a moonbeam flail, or an oak staff, a skinning knife, a dead man's compass, a wander stone, a bearded axe, a belt of water walking, a dragon tooth hammer, and then more goods. So some of these you will see will have a number, a code associated with what they are. And that means that there is a corresponding battle chit, a corresponding pog. And when you buy the Fists of Iron, you will then open up or grab your token here that corresponds to that. So this is E11. These are the Fists of Iron. Let's find the Fist of Iron here. This is, again, one thing that does kind of slow down the game. It's just trying to find these when you need to find them. But it's not too bad. It's manageable. But so if you were to buy this, then that would get added to your pool of tokens. And now when you throw your tokens, you can throw all of those. And on the card here, it tells you what symbols are on that chit. So we have a charge symbol. A charge is kind of like a super attack, but it prevents you from blocking damage on your next turn. And on the reverse side, we have an ability to block. But then if you have this equipped, and this is a piece of clothing, you can have one type of each item. Clothing, weapon, equipment, and so on. You will get a +1 to your body score, and once per combat round, when you deal charge damage, you may rethrow one of your spent tokens. So that gives you a little bit of a chance to kind of mitigate some of that luck. Sometimes you might have movement here, so these will allow you to have movement. Each time you roll a terrain dice, you can add one mountain symbol. So you always have a mountain symbol. Same as there. We have this moonbeam flail. It has a charge and a surge. Whenever you deal charge damage, you may recast, you may rethrow one of your spent tokens. You can also you can spend a surge to do a blood moon attack, dealing 1 magical damage. Or the oak staff is equipment. Once per turn while exploring in a hill or mountain hex, you may re-roll any number of terrain dice. So as you can see, the loot is pretty it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of cool things. They don't just add battle chits to your pool, they also add cool little abilities. In D here, we have the Bone Wand, Obsidian Scale Mail, a Swindler's Coat, Contraband as a good, a Patchwork Wand, Munitions, Ornaments, Advertisement, a Halberd, Thieves' Tools, Dire Flail, a Royal Uniformed, Winged Boots, a Guardian Axe, an Obsidian Great Axe, Gilded Armor, and Contraband. Now, I do miss the full-size asset cards just because the art was so cool on a lot of those old asset cards, but I do like that these are a lot different. I think these actually change up the game a little bit more. They feel a little more meaningful. We'll take a look here through Deck C. We have the Cursed Claw, the Wild Furs, Relics, Shards of Fate, Twin Daggers, material, forest garb, willow wand, a short bow, leather armor, the mana armor. Mana armor is pretty cool. It adds 2 health and it adds +1 to your mind score. We have the marsh cloak, the true sight bow, winged boots, hunting spear, and a pack. Now, one thing that you're not seeing, and this is a pretty big disappointment in my opinion, is there are no allies in the assets deck. There are actually no allies at all in Runebound 3rd edition. And the allies were something that I really did love about Runebound 2nd edition. I miss having those allies. And I think that's a pretty big bummer, because as you started adding in all the expansions to Runebound 2nd edition, you had a huge deck of allies, a huge resource that you could hire. You could hire all of these mercenaries. And I loved feeling like you were a leader of a party, a leader of an adventuring party, going out on questing and having this retinue following you around. And I miss that in Runebound 3rd editions. I think that's one of the changes that they made that I'm not a huge fan of. Okay, now let's talk about the scenarios. So Runebound 3rd edition, the base box comes with 2 different scenarios. We have the Ascendance of Margoth, and we have the Corpse King. And we just get a little bit of flavor text. I feel like this game could do a better job of expanding upon the scenarios with flavor text. However, there are some story cards which do a good job. But the Ascendance of Margoth says that the Dragon Lords were defeated in the Dragon Wars centuries ago. We remember that. High Lord Margoth's body was never found, as he was hurled into the earth with a dread wound. But some believe he will rise again. Yes, Margoth is back in Pog form. And there is Margoth there, High Lord Margoth. And when you face off against Margoth at the end of the game, these are the stats, and it is an epic combat. And in the base game is not co-op. It is a race to be the first player to kill Lord Margoth wins. And then here we have the second scenario here, the Corpse King. The dead necromancer Vorkesh roams Terranoth, leaving a blight of death and destruction in his wake. He must be stopped, or soon every barony and free city will be overrun by the undead. And then there is the epic battle against Vorkesh at the end of the game. Now, as you see on the other side of these cards here, there are these tokens here. There are white and black tokens. And those are kind of like quest tokens. And depending on the scenario, those tokens will be different things. They will represent different things. They might represent dragons. Sometimes they represent webs, or they might represent cultists or undead. Those are a generic general use token that changes depending on which scenario you are playing. So each of the scenarios comes with a deck of cards. And this is kind of where I think maybe the seeds for Arkham Horror 3rd edition, or maybe this took some things from the way Eldritch Horror works, but you will have cards that are made specifically for this scenario. So the first thing we have is these story cards, and there are 10 story cards for each scenario, but you will only ever see 8 in a game, because Runebound 3rd edition uses a strict timer. You have a timer along the side of the board, and every time all of the players have gone, you move the timer down. Anytime you cross one of these symbols, you draw one of the story cards. And there are 2 acts in the game. In each act, you will see 4 story cards. So that adds some replayability, because you never know which story cards you will see in a game. As you go through the track all the way down, then you will flip it over to Act 2, and you will place that back at the top. As Act 2 ticks down, when Act 2 reaches the end, that's when you have to face off against the enemy. So there is a little bit of time pressure in Runebound 3rd edition. You will also see symbols like this on the time track. Whenever this symbol is crossed, you refresh all of the adventure tokens that have been flipped over to their used side. So that's how you refresh your adventure tokens. In Runebound 2nd edition, you refresh tokens sometimes depending on your card draws. Okay, but back to the scenario cards here. So there are the 10 different cards. I think these are really cool. These do add a lot of theme. They do take advantage of the different places on the map, making the world feel more lived in. When you're fighting off against Margoth, sometimes you might come across young dragons, or maybe you need to aid a baron. The wisdom of the gods, you have to go to a certain place and do a little quest associated with this scenario. Margoth's legacy. Margoth might be found in this stronghold in the mountains, or perhaps there's a master living in this hex there. So really cool. I like the way that these story cards work, and I like the way that they add some more lore and some more cool things to explore. And then, like we said earlier, each one of these scenarios will come with 10 cards in each of the decks. So you have your exploration, combat, and social challenges. Those will get mixed into your other cards to where you have a total of 30. So you have some bespoke, custom, adventure and challenge cards for each of the scenarios. So each of the scenarios does feel a little bit different in terms of what you are encountering. And then in our Necromancer expansion here, we do have our story cards. So we have a Lord of Riverwatch, or the Hero of the Forge, the Undead Assault, Scorched Earth, Conscription, Friends and Family, and the Dead Walk. And then again, we also have our complement of adventure cards, the Undead Horde. That's a great looking card there. Necromancer, different quests here. We have another Undead Horde, the Reanimates, the Death Knights, and then some quests in order to find the things that we need to do, we need to find in order to kill that Necromancer. So that's basically everything that you're going to get in your base game of Runebound 3rd Edition. So in my opinion, I think the differences between Runebound 3rd Edition and Runebound 2nd Edition are very similar to the differences in Descent 1st Edition to Descent 2nd Edition, and to Mansions of Madness 1st Edition and Mansions of Madness 2nd Edition. It's a pretty big jump. It's not like, I think the differences between Arkham Horror 2nd Edition and Eldritch Horror, they feel a little more iterative. It's a little bit more of an evolution, where this kind of feels like a revolution. Even though the game still plays like an adventure game, everything else surrounding the game does feel a lot different. And different doesn't mean bad, it just means different. And I really do love Runebound 3rd Edition. I wish we had more expansions for it, more big expansions. We will take a look at the expansions in just a moment. Mainly because I would just love to see those expansion boards redone in this new kind of vibrant, detailed art style. I think they would look just absolutely fantastic. Okay, now let's move on to the expansions, and we'll start with the big one. This is one of the most coveted and one of the most difficult to find expansions maybe that Fantasy Flight has ever made, and that is Unbreakable Bonds. Like I said at the beginning of this video, Fantasy Flight very quickly abandoned this game, and I don't think they printed very many of these expansions, and it made them very difficult to find. I was very lucky that I was collecting the game, I was buying the game as it was being released, but I've seen these things go for a lot of money on eBay. They're very rare. I don't think you need Unbreakable Bonds to play the game solo. Runebound 3rd Edition, the base game, it can be played solo just like Runebound can be played solo. You can just play it solo. You can control the monsters on your own. One of the things that Unbreakable Bonds adds that makes it more solo or more co-op are some of new scenarios that feel a little bit more like threat management, a little bit more like pandemic style gaming. And it also adds some AI for the enemies, but people have created their own AI battle boards on BGG that you can find if you want to employ that in your base game, or you can just play the regular scenarios solo. And that is how I play often. But Unbreakable Bonds is your official co-op slash solo expansion for Runebound. Now, I don't have the boxes anymore. I combined all of my boxes for my Runebound 3rd Edition stuff into my my base game. So in this expansion here, you will get 2 new characters. You will get a whole bunch of new adventure cards, a whole 3 new sets of skill cards, Battle Pilgrim, 1 with the land and high society, 2 for each of the 3 stats, mind, body, and spirit. You will get these envelope cards, which these are cards that you can You can stack certain things on them, and then you can send them in the mail from cities to other players to kind of reinforce that co-op idea. You will get some new combat tokens for the enemies. So this is one thing that is quite a bit different from the base game, because each type of enemy will have its own combat tokens. You will have mystic enemies, savage enemies, trickster enemies, and then normal enemies will use the normal combat tokens from the base game. Then you will have these combat boards, and these are used in conjunction with the new combat tokens. And these are kind of like the AI that the enemy uses. We'll get a couple new sets of story cards, because this game comes with 5 scenario sheets. It comes with co-op versions of the 2 scenarios from the base game. And then it comes with, I think, 2 new scenarios. And it also comes with a co-op version of one of the expansion scenarios. There is an additional expansion scenario that was never made into this co-op solo mode. There's also a new action that you can take, and that is the prepare action. And you can have 4 prepare tokens that this comes with, so you can keep track of your prepare actions. So the 2 new characters are Tatiana and Alium. And these characters are both kind of elf type characters. 212 and 212, so very similar. I am not a huge fan of these characters. These 2 characters, I think they're kind of generic, and I don't absolutely love them. But let's take a look at their minis here. So we have the mini for this dude, and then his tokens here, his starting tokens, just more kind of like a warrior. And then we have kind of an archer, kind of a ranger style character for the other character. And then we have her battle tokens here. There is a couple new symbols there. So that symbol is I forgot what that symbol is called. That is a tactics symbol. So they added charge symbols and tactic symbols to the battle tokens. And so you can see the rules there. Just a way to add a little more decision points, a little bit some more variety to the combat. So 2 pretty big additions to the Unbreakable Bonds expansion are the party skills and the twists. Let's talk about party skills first. In the co-op mode, or if you're playing solo, if you're playing more than one hero, you can form an adventuring party. If you have 2 or more, up to 4 heroes in a single hex, they can form a party, and then they can move together as a single unit. And if any of the heroes in that party have learned any of the party skills, all of the heroes can gain those bonuses. So you have things like combat support, teamwork, share the spoils, coordinated attack, watch your back, good friends, social club, cover weakness, scouting, and explorers club. That is super cool. I like the idea that they did kind of go out of their way to make the co-op feel like you are in an adventuring party, and I really do like that. You also have a new deck of, I believe it's about 10 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 cards that are called twists. And these twists get shuffled into your asset deck. And these add just a little bit of variety to the asset deck, a little bit of randomness, some adventure, some cool things that might happen during your market phase. You might find some new inventory, or maybe there's a festival going on, or you get pickpocketed, some street magic, local trouble, secret wares, a sale, price reduction, gossip, and work the shop. Just a nice little twist, a few little twists to add to your asset deck, and I really do like those cards a lot. The new scenario cards are bigger because the scenarios are a little bit more involved. So we have our Ascendants of Margoth and our Corpse King. So these are the co-op versions of the scenarios from the base game. And that gives you all of your rules, everything you need to play these in a co-op mode. And a lot of these co-op scenarios, again, like I said, they kind of veer off into pandemic style territory where you are having to deal with a lot of threats. And the threats will build up, and you have to, you have 5 fires and 3 buckets of water. It's that kind of thing. So if you like that kind of threat management style play, you may really like the way that they changed up the scenarios for Unbreakable Bonds. And then we have Caught in the Web. So Caught in the Web is a expansion scenario that they did expand into a solo / co-op mode. And then we also have 2 new scenarios for the co-op solo. We have Red Death and the Locust Swarm, or actually fighting the Horde and searching for the cure. And both of these are okay, but they are very, very pandemic style. They're very much in that threat management sub genre of gaming. But each one of those new scenarios will come with its own story cards. And you can tell the scenario by the cards. The scenario cards will have an icon of the main enemy at the bottom there. But here we have Ground Zero, Refugee Crisis, Merchant King, Fanatical Priest, Dire Straits, Death Pits, and Tipping Point. And then we have our new complement of Exploration adventure cards, Combat adventure cards, and Social adventure cards. Secret Workshops, Outlaws, a Diseased Priest, maybe a Diseased Soldier there, Meeting of the Minds, Lawless, the Immune, Diseased Beastman, another Outlaw, the Elixir of Life. And then in our other scenario expansion here, we will have Liantha's Warband, Davena's Warband, Harketh's Warband, Burn and Pillage, Raiding Party, Sights of Evil, March at Night, Total War, Stragglers. And then we have all of our new adventure cards for that scenario as well. The Blood Sister, the Chaos Lord, Uthuk Knowledge, the Uthuk Berserker, the Flesh Ripper, the Chaos Lord again, Scout the Area, the Uthuk Deserter, Captured Citizens, Rune of Power, Lure Poison, and Refugees. So again, all kinds of new and cool things that you will get to experience in this expansion. And then probably the biggest thing are these battle boards. And these are the AI for the enemies for when you go into combat. And depending on the type of enemy, so each enemy will have a certain category here. So you might have a warrior, and a warrior uses the brown board and the brown tokens. Or maybe we have, let's see, the savage. The savage, no, actually the green is trickster, savage is red, and purple is mystic. So depending on what the enemy type is, you will use that battle board, and then that will govern the enemy's AI and how they will spend their tokens. When they cast their tokens, you will align those with the various spots on the battle board, and then you will go down from top to bottom, executing each move and doing what it says on the battle board. It just gives you a little bit more variety, a little bit of an easier way to handle the enemy AI. And one thing that the Unbreakable Bonds expansion does with combat is it turns combat into a very, very deadly thing. At the end of each combat, you will be beat up. You will have a lot of wounds. Combat is very difficult in this expansion, but it does it on purpose. It does it as a way to throttle your time, because it makes you take rest actions more often, so that time is ticking away, so that the game can fight back with delivering its threats. So because of that threat management style system, the game needs to be a little bit longer and a little bit more drawn out, so the game's AI can build the threat to add a challenge to the players. So that's why combat is far more deadly using Unbreakable Bonds. So that's basically everything you'll get in Unbreakable Bonds. Now we'll take a look at the 4 small expansions. The first one is a scenario expansion, and that's called Caught in the Web. So again, Caught in the Web does come with a co-op and solo version in Unbreakable Bonds. And you will also get your scenario cards for Caught in the Web. You will get your 10 story cards. So as this one suggests, it's all about dealing with spiders, and there's webs everywhere, and you have to deal with all these little spider outbreaks. You're kind of like fantasy pest control in this one. And you will also get, again, your 10 new combat cards, your 10 new adventure cards, and your exploration cards, and your 10 new social cards. And so these add all kinds of things: a pestilent swarms, a bane spider, a spider's trap. Maybe you need to go on this quest to find this forest that's been blanketed in webs, an infested gardens, murky dwellings, a cave spider, another bane spider, prophetic rumors, pestilent swarm. So yeah, very, very thematic. If you have arachnophobia, I do not recommend this expansion there. This expansion also comes with a single new hero. So you will get Jonas the Kind. And let's see, Jonas's mini is here. Pretty cool mini. I like the quarterstaff there. That's nice. And then his starting pogs here. So we have a 2-charge, a combat, damage there, a defense, more damage, a doubler. And then you will also get your normal non-co-op, non-solo version of the Caught in the Web scenario. And that's basically it. It's a pretty small expansion. These expansions were in kind of a medium-sized boxes. They weren't in the small box expansions like Runebound 2nd Edition, but they also weren't in big boxes with lids. They had flapped at the end. So they weren't very nice boxes, a very thin cardboard, not like a sturdy cardboard box from a game. And so that's why I decided not to keep any of these expansions. Now, one of the expansions was never expanded to have a solo or co-op mode, and that is Fall of the Dark Star here. And Fall of the Dark Star comes with one new character, and that new character is right here. So we get Zyla, and Zyla is kind of like this imp or this demon thing. She's pretty cool here. Really neat mini there with the wings. And then we have her combat tokens here. So those are her 3 starting combat tokens. And she actually has a 0 for body and a 2 and a 2. She can channel chaos. She uses 4 dice for movement, and she has a 7 health and 3 cards in her skill hand, or her hand of skill cards, I should say. And then here we have the Fall of the Dark Star. So this is the expansion that was never made into a co-op or solo version. This expansion also comes with some new corruption cards. So I think this is the only expansion that comes with a new deck of completely new cards. So these are things that you will have to deal with, some other threat that you will have to deal with while you are playing this expansion. But then, like the others, you have your 10 story cards. So let's see, we have Ascent of the Exile Peak, Blood at Hunter's Circle, Rifts at the Garden, Brawl at Dawnsmore, The Darkest Curse, Blessing of Wormwood, and Visions of Dawn. Lots of cool quests in this expansion. This expansion is pretty cool. And then, of course, we get all of our normal adventure cards. So we have our combat cards. You will be fighting things like the Stubborn Specters, or Dark Priests, Bandits. You will have quests like Ominous Preparations, or Whispering Winds, Thorns of Fire. And then you will have some interactions, some events like Woeful Song, Messages of the Stars, and Elder Interpreter. So that is the Fall of the Dark Star expansion. I wish they would have included a co-op or solo mode. I'm not sure why they didn't. I'm not sure why this one didn't get the treatment. Maybe it just wasn't in the lineup. I don't know. I can't remember the release order for these. So this might have come out too late or too early, or maybe they had just abandoned the game by the time they got around to doing it. And then here we have 2 character expansions. And here is where I think the clues are that we didn't get a 3rd character expansion, and there should have been a 3rd character expansion. So here we have the Gilded Blade and Mountain Rise. And each one of these comes with 1 character and all of the things you need to play that character. So here we get Nanok of the Blade for the Mountain Rise, kind of this barbarian type character. And here we get fan favorite Red Scorpion. So each one of these comes with those. It comes with a new deck of asset cards, some new combat tokens, and new skill cards. However, the Nanok of the Blade comes with a new deck of blue skill cards, and the Red Scorpion comes with a new deck of yellow skill cards. We never got an expansion that came with a new deck of red skill cards, of body skill cards. And I have a feeling that this character here was probably going to be in a third character expansion, and she would have come with a new deck of red skill cards, because now we have, when we're mixing and matching our skill cards to make our skill deck at the beginning of the game, the red cards, there are fewer number of red cards to choose from. So that really does lead me to believe that we were never given a complete cycle of Runebound 3rd edition. But the Nanok mini, this dude is awesome. I love this mini so much. This is a fantastic barbarian mini. They did a fantastic job with that guy. And then here we have his starting tokens here, his starting battle tokens. And then, of course, we have Red Scorpion. A much better pose than her old pose from Runebound 2nd edition, that is for sure. And then we have her starting battle tokens. The asset cards and the skill cards have already been shown, I believe. Let's see here. We've got, here's the cards from Nanok. So we have the blue cards here: Aria of War, Stars and Omens, Song of Mending, Glory of Battle, Quick Anecdote, A Tale to Tell. He's kind of like a bard. He's a barbarian that is boisterous and, likes to tell stories, likes to sit around a campfire and tell tales. Once per combat, Cacophony, Rewriting History, Vision of Woe, and Wild Heart. And then here are the cards that come with, those are the Power of Profit for Red Scorpion here. We have Caravan Network, Superiority Complex, Victory Foretold, Quick Fix, Knowledge Gained, Evacuation Protocol, Investments, Complete Confidence, Negotiations, Limitless Ambition, Pursuit of Knowledge. And then here are the other skill cards that came with Unbreakable Bonds. We get the Jump, Cautious, Slippery, Expert Shopper, Local Quests, Exploit Defense, Lessons, Fast Horses, Master Thief. And then our body skills here, we have Skilled Tracker, Itinerant, Pursuit of Strength, Execute, Hiker, Veteran Fighter, Battle Rush, Reckless, Trapper, Endless Energy, and finally, Journeyed, Speed of Kurnos, Canoeing, Blessed Armor, Ride the Wind, Vessel of the Spirits, Blessed Weapon, Pursuit of Magic, Divine Voices, and Divine Missile. So, all right, well, that was an exhaustive look at Runebound 3rd edition. I believe that is all of the official expansions. I'm not sure if FFG ever made any promos for this game. I'm sure if they did, I'm sure they are super expensive just because of how expensive everything else is for this game. I really do like Runebound 3rd edition. Again, it is a different kind of game, or it's a similar kind of game, just with different mechanisms. It's a different way to execute a similar adventure style game. And it just depends on what kind of mood I am in, which game I want to play. If I want something simple, straightforward, something that I can add a lot of house rules, something that I can tinker with, like a sandbox game, I will play Runebound 2nd edition. If I want something that has a little bit more modern design, some more modern mechanisms, and I want to play something that maybe has a little bit more threat management and a little bit more to it, a little bit more involved combat, I will play Runebound 3rd edition. I am super happy to have both in my collection. I know this game is super expensive, and I'm sorry to be spending so much time on a game that is so hard to find and so expensive. I really wish Fantasy Flight would bring Runebound back. I would love to see that 3rd character expansion. I don't want to see a 4th edition. I would just like them to bring 3rd edition back and continue to expand 3rd edition. Give us some new 3rd edition versions of those big box expansions where we can get some of that great new map art. And I think that would be awesome. But I also think that there's probably a snowball's chance in hell that we will ever see Runebound come back. So, all right, you guys. Well, hey, that is the end. That is the final episode of the Runebound Retrospective. We have covered everything that I own for all of the Runebound games. And I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you've had a nice time going on this adventure with me. And we will talk to you later. Bye bye.